Shalom. Apologize for the technical problems, but we got you back. We left off at Ecclesiastes, the 8th chapter, the 5th and 6th verse. And I'll just read this 5th verse again. Whoever keeps the commandments shall feel no evil thing, and a wise man's heart discerns both time and judgment. And so a lot of people confused today because they don't know what time we're in, nor do they understand judgment. They see what's going on, they feel what's going on, they hear what's going on, but they really don't understand time and judgment. And I'll show you why. But I also will show you understanding time and judgment is essential to knowing, to discerning what's going on today. In the book of Jeremiah, the 8th chapter, as I was stating before, everybody want to know, when will we get back to normal? When will we get back to commerce and business, making money, and doing all the things that we were doing before? But the one question you don't hear nobody asking, when will people stop dying? They're not asking that question. When will people stop dying by the thousands and hundreds? But they want to know when we're going to get back to normal. In the book of Jeremiah, the 8th chapter, the 6th verse, I listened and heard, but they spoke not aright. No man repented him of his wickedness, saying, what have I done? Nobody asking, what have I done? Everyone turned to his course as the horse rushes into the battle. Yes, the stork in the heaven knows her appointed times. The turtle and the crane and the swallow observe the time of their coming. But my people know not the judgment of Yahweh. They don't know the judgment of Yahweh. So today looks very strange to them because they don't even know the judgment of Yahweh. They don't know that this is how judgment look. This is what judgment is. And since they don't know, they want to know how long it's going to be. Well, if you knew judgment, then you would know. It says, how do you say we are wise, and the law of Yahweh is with us? Lo, certainly in vain made he, the pen of the scribes is in vain. Everything I done wrote, everything I done told you, all the things I done showed you in my word, and you still don't know? The wise men are ashamed. They are dismayed and taken low. They have rejected the word of Yahweh. And what wisdom is in them? And the answer is none. None. Because they still refuse to acknowledge the one that smokes man. They refuse to acknowledge the one that brings the evil in the city. And they don't even know what this is. They don't realize it's a time of judgment. And this is what Yahweh would do in a time of judgment. And it's understandable why they can't discern. Because the Creator says this in the book of Proverbs 28. He let us know something very profound. And it's in the book of Proverbs 28 in verse 5. And this is what it says. Evil men understand not judgment, so I get it. But they that seek Yahweh understand all things. So evil men don't understand what's going on and how long something going to be. They telling you everything will be open May 1st when they know that's not the case. Yeah, they may force some things open May 1st or even before May 1st. But make no mistake about it, Yahweh will shut it down. You might build again, but Yahweh would tear it right back down. Because evil men, they don't understand judgment anyway. They don't understand why these things are happening anyway. And many of our people undoubtedly are also confused. How can you be confused when every state is under an emergency, telling you to stay home, while thousands of lives has been killed? And they can't stop it. With all their power, with all their money, with all their great scientists, talking about how great their medical fields are and their hospitals are. Well, if the hospitals and the doctors and the medical field and the scientists so great, then tell them to stop life from being taken. If they so great, tell them to heal the sick, the plagued. And we know they cannot. And since they can't, rather than you just sit at home and just watch the dead, not the walking dead, not the living dead, but just the dead, death. Instead of you just sitting there watching that, they want society to be open so that you won't even think about it. You can go on about your business and play tennis and watch basketball games and football games with nobody in the stadiums. You can go ahead and watch the NFL draft with nobody in no type of hall or anything. But the smoke and mirrors, you would think everybody is together. But nobody is together. They want you to be able to go back to the bars and to the restaurants like before. And why? Because now and then you won't be focused on death, in mourning, in misery, not realizing that's exactly what Yahweh, it's exactly where Yahweh wants your mind and heart at anyway. And let me show you this in the book of Ecclesiastes, the 7th chapter. So while you running from what is good, the power brokers is trying to dumb you down and give you a mind of vanity and pleasure. Watch what the Creator lets us know in the book of Ecclesiastes, the 7th chapter, the 2nd verse. Well, we're going to start at the 1st verse. It says, a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. And that's what Trump and all the power brokers want you to do. Go to the bars, go to the restaurant, feast, have a good time. Don't think about misery. But it is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, even though they'll tell you laughter is better than sorrow. For by the sadness of the countenance, the heart is made better. And watch what it says. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning. Sometimes I'm watching this thing and I can't turn away from it. No matter how hard it is, no matter how painful it is. And look, here it is, I'm watching the special report that they had on Italy, where this thing took off first, in the richest part of Italy, where they have some of the top hospitals around the world. These hospitals are some of the best in terms of the hospitals that have the great technology in them. They have some of the best doctors. And they had somebody going to these hospitals. And all you seen was a bunch of rich people where their money, their power, their status could not help them. They had big plastic bubbles on their head because they called them like oxygen chambers just on their heads, because these guys, this virus was taking their breath so bad that they couldn't, it wasn't enough oxygen just to put on their nose and mouth. They had the whole head in a bubble of oxygen. Everybody that was in the room, they had to convert the whole hospital to ICU. They asked the top doctor there, they asked him, what is this? What is this virus? They said it's like the flu. He told them, he said, this is nothing like the flu. He said, the only thing that we can compare this to is the worst case of pneumonia that you ain't never seen, where fluid is just rising up in the lungs and taking people's breath, where they can't breathe. It's like them being in a swimming pool drowning. And he said, as a doctor, he said, never once in my life Never once in this field have I felt powerless. Sitting there watching, knowing no matter what I do, these people are going to die. And they are dying. Now, this was in the best hospital, with the best doctors, with the best technology. So you only can imagine what we have in the inner cities. We have the best of nothing. So no wonder blacks are dying at a greater rate. And we here, are we to believe that this is not judgment? Some type of test? Divine test? Are we to believe this is not a plague? This is exactly the work of judgment that Yahweh often brings according to the scriptures. But evil men don't understand judgment anyway. So they don't know what this is. So surely they're going to tell you that, yeah, we're going to open up in another few weeks. We're going to get things back to normal. When Yahweh want the earth, want his people, and want the inhabitants of the earth, he want to put something on their mind and on their heart. And he know how to do it. He know how to bring it. Watch this in the book of Psalms. Psalm, the 9th chapter. And we're talking about judgment, how it look, what it is. The plague, the divine test of Yah. And the only reason why this thing is not familiar to people, recognizable to people, is because they don't know Yahweh. Because if they knew Yahweh, they would know this. In the book of Psalms 9, in the 16th verse, this is what it says. Yahweh is known by the judgment which he executes. The wicked is snared in the works of his own hands. Selah. See, this is how Yahweh is known. He's known by the judgment he executes. So when Yahweh start working and doing things, then people start taking notice and acknowledging. And right now, they fighting to take notice. They act like nobody is dying. Let's just get back to normal. Let's just open up society. Let's get these bars and restaurants open. Let's start playing tennis and baseball and basketball and football. Let's get back busy. The draft is coming up. We never got an NBA championship. No, they're not thinking about Yahweh, nor are they thinking about his judgment, for they don't even know the judgment of God. But Yahweh wants them to know his judgment, and this is what they're going to know. And you can take this to the book, to the bank, to the highest hill on earth, and proclaim it. And watch what Yahweh says in the book of Exodus, the 12th chapter. in the book of Exodus, the 12th chapter, the 12th verse. And further by these, my son, be admonished of making many books. There is no end. And much study is a weariness of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear Elohim and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. For Elohim shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it is good or whether it is evil. So all things going to be brought into judgment. Did the preachers and the pastors and the so-called reverends forget that? You would think all Sunday is good for when you go to church is to pass a plate. Because they not talking about the judgment of Yahweh. They had like these works is not going to be brought into judgment. You would think at the mosque, all they learn at the mosque is to get revenge. Strap a bomb on your chest and blow somebody up. Get revenge. And even those who don't want to get revenge, all they are taught is to pray. But where is your works? Where's your works? Are you feeding the poor? Are you taking care of the widow and the fatherless? Most of the Arabs I see in our community, they doing just the opposite. They taking advantage of our communities. They not giving back at all. Not one store is giving back to no schools, to no food banks, to nobody on the streets. We don't see their works. And if anybody needs to see their works, it's us, because we the ones live in the community. All work will be brought unto judgment. And this is what Yahweh is doing today. He's judging, but people don't understand it. They don't recognize it. They don't see it. They're not acknowledging it, but that's okay. Because rest assured, they will. Sooner rather than later. And I just want you to see how judgment look, so you won't be so shocked and surprised about what you're seeing today and what you will see in the nearest future. This is just the beginning. By no stretch of the imagination is it what they're saying. They telling you we're almost at the peak. And when you're at the peak, now all you do is go down. No, it's nothing what they say at all. Watch this in the book of 1 Chronicles 21. Show you how judgment look. Here it is. Thousands of people have died. The only time you see deaths like this is during a time of war. And the only other time you see deaths like this is in the scriptures. When it's a time of plague. And these plagues don't come from Satan. They come from the Most High. Watch this story. First Chronicles 21, I'm going to start at the very first verse. And Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel And to number Israel, that's a sin. This is a sin. This is something that you're not to do, because the Almighty said, we will be the sand of the sea. We will be the stars of heaven. And David said to Joab and to the rulers of the people, go, number Israel from Beersheba even to Dan, and bring the number of them to me that I may know it. And Joab answered, Yahweh make his people 100 times so many more as they are. But my master the king, are they not all my master's servants? They all your servants, so what you need to know the number for? Why then does my master require this thing? And why will he be a cause of trespass to Israel? This against the law, David. Nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab, because he didn't know that David had a spirit in which Yahweh wanted to judge Israel. And David was the instrument that Yahweh would use to do it. Therefore Joab departed and went through all Israel and came to Jerusalem. And Joab gave the sum of the number of the people to David. And all they of Israel were 1,000, and 100,000 men that drew the sword. And Yehuda was 410,000 men that drew the sword. But Levi and Benjamin counted he not among them, for the king's word was an abominable to Joab. So Joab was smart enough not to count everybody. And Elohim was displeased with this thing. Therefore he smote Israel. And David said to Elohim, I've sinned greatly, because I've done this thing. But now I beseech you, take away the iniquity of your servant, for I've done very foolishly. And Yahweh spoke to Gad, David's seer, saying, go and tell David, saying, thus says Yahweh, I offer you 3 things. Now, why 3? Yahweh could have said 10 things. He could have said 2 things. He could have said 8 things. But I offer you 3 things. Choose you one of them, that I may do it to you. So Gad came to David and said to him, thus says Yahweh, choose you either 3 years of famine, 3 months, or 3 months to be destroyed before your foes, while the sword of your enemies overtakes you. Or else 3 days, the sword of Yahweh, even the pestilence. In the land, and the angel Yahweh destroying throughout all the coasts of Israel. Now therefore advise yourself what word I shall bring back to him that sent me. In other words, David sinned. And this thing was going down, and judgment had to be passed, and judgment had to be rendered. And Yahweh wanted to know, what judgment should I give you, David? Now, if you don't know who King David is, King David, according to the scriptures, was a man after Yahweh's own heart. David's name means beloved, because not only was he beloved by all the people he commanded, but he was beloved by Yahweh. David was a man of war that fought the battles of Yahweh. But even though he was this special, to the extent that Yahweh said he will bring David back. He still asked David to choose his judgment. 3 years of famine, 3 months to be destroyed before his enemies, or 3 days of the sword of Yahweh, even the pestilence. And David said to Gad, I am in great distress. And you know how you tell your kids, look here, son, you getting it. You definitely getting it. So right now, I just want you to choose. Either you can stay in the house all week long, or you can take this whooping. Or I can take all them electronics away from you. And depending on who they are, and depending on the father that's telling them, they will choose what they think is wisest. And David, this was his choice. And David said to Gad, I am in great distress. Let me fall down into the hand of Yahweh, for great are the mercy, great are his mercies, but let me not fall into the hand of man. So Yahweh sends pestilence upon Israel. And watch what it says. And there fell of Israel 70,000 men. And Elohim sent an angel to Jerusalem to destroy it. As he was destroying, Yahweh beheld, and he repented him of the evil, and said to the angel that destroyed, it is enough. Stay now your hand. And the angel of Yahweh stood by the threshing floor on Nan the Jebusite. And David lifted up his eyes and saw the angel of Yahweh standing between earth and heaven, having his a drawn sword in his hand stretched out over Jerusalem. Then David and the elders of Israel, who were clothed in sackcloth, fell upon their faces. And David said to Elohim, is it not I that commanded the people to be numbered? Even I it is that have sinned and done evil indeed. But as for these sheep, what have they done? Let your hand, I pray you, O Yahweh my Elohim, be on me and on my father's house, but not on your people, that they should be plagued. Then the angel of Yahweh commanded Gad to say to David, that David should go up and set up an altar unto Yahweh in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And little did David know, see, David didn't know Israel had been sinning. Israel had been doing wickedly. He didn't know that. And he didn't know Yahweh did this and just used him as an instrument to deal with Israel. 70,000 had to die. And David knew this was a great plague. And this was somebody who Yahweh loved. Who Yahweh said this was the apple of my eye. My world without end. My battle axe. My witnesses. So this thing we seeing today, they doing more than numbering Israel. As a matter of fact, they trying to take the census as we speak. And look at the irony. The people who die the most are the ones who need to be counted the most. But they the ones, according to the law, should not be counted. No Israelite should be participating in those census. You don't see what happened to David? when he numbered the children of Israel, and you don't see the judgment, the plague that Yahweh brought on them, enslaved 70,000 people, and that happened in 3 days. 3 days. And all we are, since the first death, January the 17th, just 3 months down. 3 months. And what did Yahweh tell David? 3 years of famine, 3 days of the sword, 3 months of running from your enemies, them pursuing you and tearing your tail up. Because this is the judgment of Yahweh. And why our people, why they refuse to acknowledge the word of Yahweh. Let me show you another time of judgment, something that Yahweh would do. In the book of Exodus, the 2nd chapter, we turn there. And we're talking about Yahweh's plague, Yahweh's test, Yahweh's judgment. Evil men understand not judgment, but they that seek Yahweh understand all things. It says the wise man's heart discerns both time and judgment. In the book of Exodus, the 2nd chapter, watch what it says in the very first verse. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived, and bore a son. And when she saw him, that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. Now, why did she hide him 3 months? And what was so important about that? Because little do people know. Little did the Egyptians know. Little did the Israelites know that Yahweh was about to bring judgment. And when she could no longer hide him after 3 months, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off to know what will be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. And her maidens walked along by the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. And she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call to you a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away, nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages." And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moshe. And she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." And why did she put him in the water anyway? Well, in the book of Exodus, the 1st chapter, watch what it says. Exodus 1 and 21. And it came to pass, because The midwives feared Elohim that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. So in other words, they was casting all the Hebrew men into the river to kill them. Well, Moses' mother cast him in the river herself, but she put him in a little ark. And that ark, Pharaoh's daughter received, and Moses became her son. And that same Moses who became her son, that same Moses who was raised up in Pharaoh's house, that same Moses that was like an Egyptian, a prince in Egypt, was the same Moses that brought Egypt to their knees. And how would he do that? What did he say unto the Egyptians to even think about bringing them to their knees? Look what Yahweh told Moses. And Moses was here 3 months. Just like David, in his judgment, had the opportunity to be pursued by his enemies 3 months. Or the sword of Yah for 3 days. Or famine for 3 years. But this Moses was here 3 months. And that's because Yahweh was about to bring judgment. And watch what it says in Exodus, the 3rd chapter. And look what this Moses had to do. And we're going to start reading the 16th verse. Before I read that 16th verse, I'm going to read the 9th verse. And this is what it says. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me. And I've also seen the oppression with which the Egyptian oppressed them. And our people still chilling and relaxing. Their crying came up yet. But it will. Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And our people ain't crying yet. That's the only reason why this thing ain't came to its fullness. Because our people are not crying yet. Watch the 7th verse of this same chapter. And Yahweh said, I've surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt. And I've heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows. Yeah, our people got to cry. And they're not crying yet. Even though our people are dying in record numbers, they still outside barbecuing and playing spades and tongue. But they gonna cry. Make no mistake about it. They will cry. But watch what it says in this Exodus, the 3rd chapter. The 17th verse, or 16th verse. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob, appeared to me, saying, I have surely visited you and seen that which is done to you in Egypt. And I've said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. And they shall listen to your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and you shall say to him, Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim. And I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go. No, not by a mighty hand. And I will stretch out my hand and smite Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in the midst thereof. And after that he will let you go. And I will give these people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And it shall come to pass that when you go, you shall not go empty. But every woman shall borrow of her neighbor, and of her that dwells in her house, jewels of silver, jewels of gold, clothing, and you shall put them upon your sons and upon your daughters, and you shall spoil the Egyptians. And this is exactly what happened. Because why? This is the judgment of Yahweh. This is how Yahweh judgment actually look. But here today, you would think what we're reading don't even exist. You would think that this book has no validity at all. You mean to tell me the powers to be don't know what we're reading? They don't know how Yahweh will plague the children of men and even his own people? They don't know the works of Yahweh, what he did of old? Surely they do know. They know better than we know. They know better than our own people. The judgment, the plague, the test of Yahweh. That's what we're talking about. And let me just show you again how Yahweh's judgment look in the book of Genesis, the 40th chapter. So when you think about this time, you think about the judgment that's going all around the earth right now. Make no mistake about it. It is a plague. And you want to know how long this thing is. Well, you got to know the judgment of Yahweh. You got to know how Yahweh do things and how Yahweh work. You got to discern time and judgment. And watch this in the book of Genesis 40, starting at the very first verse. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their master, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry against two of his officers, and against the chief of the butlers, and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. And they continued a season inward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in a prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his master's house, saying, why look you so sadly today? And they said to him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to Elohim? Tell me them, I pray you. And yes, interpretations belong to the Most High. It don't belong to us. People giving their understanding about this and their understanding about that. There's only one understanding, and it's Yah's understanding. The only thing you got to know, who did he give it to? And watch what it says in the 9th verse. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. And it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. And why? And how did he know that? Because this is Yah's judgment. And a wise man's heart discerns time and judgment. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up your head and restore you to your place. In other words, you locked up in jail, but Pharaoh going to bring you out, and you're going to be restored back to the place in which you was before today. And this will happen within 3 days. You shall deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand after the former manner when you were his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with you, and show kindness. And I pray you unto me, and make mention of me to Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews. And here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. And when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. And so not only David's judgment was either 3 months from his enemies, 3 years of famine, or 3 days, the sword of Yahweh. Moses' judgment, he was in a basket for 3 months because he was the one who will ultimately judge Israel or the Egyptians. And here we have Joseph interpreting the dreams of the baker and the butler. And watch what happens. And in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of baked goods for Pharaoh. And the birds did eat them out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Here are these 3 days again. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up your head from off you, and shall hang you on a tree. And the birds shall eat your flesh from off you. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants. And he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler to his butlership again. And he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. He forgot him. But nevertheless, he ultimately remembered him. On that 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday, he remembered him because he was brought, he was set up to bring about judgment in Egypt. Because you got to be able to discern time and judgment. The only reason it's talking about 3 baskets and 3 branches is because something was going to take place in 3 days. The only reason it was talking about 3 months, because after 3 months, something profound will happen after those 3 months. And the only reason it was talking about 3 years of famine, 3 months before your enemies, and 3 days of the sword of Yahweh is because Yahweh was judging Israel. So what have we here today? We have a plague that's going out all over the world. All over. This plague has taken away the great abominable holidays of the big churches, grounded the planes, docked the ships, closed the business, and now they want to know when can they get back to normalcy. But none of them even know time and judgment. They don't even know and realize somebody is being judged. And the world is forever changed. And people are being plagued and dying. And who is dying more than anyone? Yahweh's servant. who he loved. But his death, their death, is not in vain. By no stretch of the imagination is it in vain. And when did all this begin to happen? In the third year. And we're the only ones teaching you about the years of Yahweh. And it was the third year. It was the third year when these plagues began to break out. And now we're in the fourth year. But this third is essential for people to know about because it is part of Yahweh's judgment. Of course, the people don't know this, so therefore, they just want to know, when will this be over? The children are begging their parents, can we just go out? Can we just have some fun? Can we just go over so-and-so house? Can we just get out of here? Can we go swimming? Can we do this? Can we do that? Because they're not used to being cooped up. The parents, many of them ain't even used to being around their own children. Saying, man, I heard one story where a woman has a son that's what they consider it's not Down syndrome, but autism, mental conditions, mental handicap. But he was in school part of the day. And he was accustomed to a routine of being away from his family, being with his peers, friends, other people at school that has the same issues and problems that he has. He was accustomed to a routine of doing things that he liked and he enjoyed. But now, he's at home because the schools are closed. His mother, brother and sister, they at home, all of them. And it is not the same. And she's trying to figure out what to do because she's not used to doing this on her own, even though this is her child. And now she's dealing with a whole new world and don't know when this world gonna end. She can't take him nowhere because all the businesses are closed. They said no social, or you got to have social distancing. So now she have to do this on her own. And this is where many other people are. But none of them are talking about time and judgment. So they don't know, they don't understand how long this thing is going to be. Some say 18 months, some say 12 months, some say we getting back May the 1st. Even before now, we were told we was going to get back during the time of Easter. But still to this day, people are dying. The numbers are not decreasing as they say. They call it plateauing. plateauing. That makes no kind of sense. When you got over 700 people dying in one city. In St. Louis, Missouri, they said all the COVID-19 cases are African Americans. But everybody wants society reopened. And let me show you one more scripture on time and judgment. And you read about it in the book of Hosea, the 6th chapter. In the book of Hosea, the 6th chapter, the very first verse, this is what it says. Come, and let us return unto Yahweh, for he has torn, and nobody's saying let's return. And he will heal us. Nobody talking about that. He has smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days, will he revive us? And make no mistake about it, our people need to be revived in every kind of way. Not only are we the only ones that don't know who we are, where we come from, our language, our history, our homeland, we the only ones that don't know anything about us as a people. But Yahweh still said after 2 days, will he revive us? And these 2 days represents time and judgment. In the 3rd day, he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. But he got to revive us. And what type of revival is this? You know it ain't no church revival. This revival must be to save our life. Then shall we know, if we follow on to know Yahweh. His going forth is prepared as the morning, and he shall come to us as the rain, as the latter and former rain to the earth. O Ephraim, what shall I do unto you? O Yehuda, what shall I do unto you? For your goodness is as the morning cloud, and as the early dew, it goes away. Therefore have I hewed them by the prophets. I've slain them by the words of my mouth. And your judgments are as the light that goes forth. For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of Elohim more than burnt offerings. And this is what we need today. The knowledge of Elohim. So that we begin to learn time and judgment. Because the people, the power brokers to be, will not tell you. They're not going to show you. All the times is wrong. All the judgments is wrong. So as we go and continue on in this great house of mourning, know this, that it is better to be in the house of mourning than the house of feasting. Know this, that one's death is better than one's birth. And also know this, that the heart of the wise is in the heart, or is in the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning. But the wicked, their heart is in the house of feasting. Time of judgment. This is what you got to know. And make no mistake about it, this is exactly what Yahweh is doing today. So until tomorrow, Yahweh love you, and so do I. Shalom.
Yes. Oh, Fourth Tribe Entertainment. It's gonna be a new day. It's gonna be a new way. You must think that you're our king. Yehuda Dean, Fourth Tribe ENT. It's gonna be a new day. It's the beginning of a new way. You could never be our king. Yehuda Dean, rep Yah with me. It's the dawn of 400 years, 400 years since we shed our first tears, 400 years since my ancestors slain, 400 years since we all knew his name. 400 in this land, Babylon, the bases of many kings. Yah's name is gone. We are the mighty Yehuda Dean. Lions of Yah, praise Yah with me. The righteous, Yah, the holy, Yah, the creator, Yah, the only, Yah, the righteous, Yah, the holy, Yah, the creator, Yah, the only, Yah. He is our king, our savior, and our judge, Yehuda Dean. Yahweh is righteous. He is our king, our savior, and our judge, Yehuda Dean. King. Oh, Yehuda deep for driving and deep. Oh, it's
We ride for,
Yeah,
we die for,
Yeah.
serve y'all only cause there is no one besides one.
let them know.
We ride for, we die for, serve y'all only cause there is no one besides one.
Let them know.
there is none